Last week was a very busy week for Microsoft Flight Simulator. A whole bunch of announcements, a whole load of new information, and of course the Q&A with the developers. So in this video I'd like to discuss a few points that were raised in that particular live stream. First up though, big news from PMDG, who recently released their brand new plane, their first plane actually for Microsoft Flight Simulator, the DC-6. So as a piston-powered airliner, the Douglas DC-6 is a pretty significant addition to Microsoft Flight Simulator, not least because of its size and the fact that it is a piston-powered plane, but also because the guys behind it, PMDG, are well known and well respected for releasing study-level planes. This marks the first, or pretty much the first edition of a study-level plane for Microsoft Flight Simulator, and therefore delivers something that die-hard simmers have been asking for a very long time. A complex airplane for this sim. Now typically PMDG products are fairly expensive, at least compared to other planes, but that's because so much has gone into developing them. The DC-6N is currently priced at $55, down from its regular price of $60. That's a small discount for its current sale period. So those of you new to the flight sim community may be a little bit surprised to see these prices, but those of you who are well versed at this point in the flight sims, I'm sure you're pretty excited to see this particular plane arrive on the scene at last. Now moving on to the Q&A with the developers, the guys did talk about quite a few different subjects, and I'll go through a few of the highlights that I thought quite interesting. So to start with was a little bit of information on World Update 5 that I released last week, Wednesday I think, or was it Thursday? And one thing that people noticed is that World Update 5 for the Nordics didn't contain any photogrammetry cities, and this is unusual because all the previous World Updates have indeed included new 3D cities. So the reason for the absence this time around is simply because getting hold of that type of data can be very, very difficult, and I'd assume it gets a little bit more difficult the further north you go, generally due to the lower availability or less availability of that type of data. Head of Microsoft Flight Simulator, Jörg Newman, said that he is dedicated to getting some cities done up that way, so even though they're missing this time around, they should come at some point in the future, and that could be Oslo, Helsinki, or indeed any one of the other cities up there, hopefully more than just one. Now, we know at this point the next World Update is going to be Germany, Austria and Switzerland. Releasing around the same time is a brand new plane from Asobo. This will be the Junker U-52. So this is a pretty old plane, but it's also an extremely popular plane, or famous plane, coming out of Germany. Now the plane looks like it's quite detailed. It's in some relatively early phases at the moment. It will have a fully functional cockpit and has also been built with feedback from real Junker pilots. So whilst World Update 6 itself will be free as per previous World Updates, the airplane will be chargeable. Both are intended to release around Gamescom, which will be in August, and as of the moment there's no price point released for the new plane. Moving on to missing airports. There's been quite a few dotted around, in fact a big list of missing airports, and indeed broken airports made it to the forums. I'll try and include a bit of that on the screen right here. Now Asobo are aware of this thanks to that list, and they've said that they will go through and double check these and make sure they're all fixed. So it may take a bit of time before they get all of this done, but Asobo are very keen to make sure everything is as it should be. And this leads quite nicely onto the idea of different themed world updates. Currently world updates are themed by region, so regions being the UK or Northern Europe as we've seen before, or even the USA and so on. Eventually, once Asobo have updated as many countries as they possibly can, the next idea will be to move on to more themed updates, and these could be something like a marina update or sea-based update, or maybe an update for train stations, those types of things then. So in short, a lot of work is planned for the future updates. Another example here that Asobo were pretty adamant will happen at some point is lighthouses and the sea beacons, so pretty much anything along those sort of lines. Now with all the world updates comes updates to points of interest. Asobo are pretty interested in returning back to previously created points of interest, specifically points of interest that were designed at launch, and returning to them and improving them, largely due to recent ones being of a higher quality than the original ones, so there should be some room for improvement there. Also, they said they expect to make 2,000 brand new points of interest next year in 2022. Now, talking of future updates, something Asobo did mention that I found very interesting was a reference repeatedly to the strike team for World 2.0. So unless I've missed something here, there wasn't a whole lot of detail on exactly what that means, but it does seem that they're planning some significant updates at some point in the future. A part of this will be the Aurora Borealis. All of this is in research and development. On that in specific, it was suggested it may take as long as 6 months or more of work to actually get the Aurora Borealis developed and working, and that's simply because Asobo want it modelled accurately rather than just fudged into place. Another thing they're looking at is to simulate high and low tides. Obviously, there's a lot of work for this. There are some databases available apparently. It's more of a long-term goal, but something that Asobo are very keen to make happen at some point in the future. So, with all this work going into Microsoft Flight Simulator, I personally was kind of interested to hear how many people are actually working on the sim. It turns out that there's around about 500 people, maybe significantly more, working on Microsoft Flight Simulator. This includes a dedicated sim team from Asobo themselves, which is around 200 people. A team dedicated at Bing, which includes 200 people. 3D editors and are working in various different places. This is between 30 to 40 different people. All of these work directly with Asobo, and there's potentially more beyond that. And this team includes a team working on the height field map, so for terrain data, as well as another team for photogrammetry, and they go in and manually correct any anomalies or problems that you see in photogrammetry areas. Meanwhile, Gaia, who are one of the groups behind making many of the points of interest that we see in the sim, as well as airports as well, they have 40 people working for them. So we're pretty much up to around 500 people there, and that's without even counting partners such as Working Title and the many other partners that are working on the sim as well. So if it wasn't clear before, it should be pretty clear at this point that Microsoft Flight Simulator is a pretty significant undertaking. So that covers many of the highlights from the latest Q&A. The next Q&A is on Sim Update 5, which is scheduled for the 30th of June. And of course, from what we understand at least, Sim Update 5 should coincide with the Xbox release of the sim, and therefore should bring with it some pretty significant updates. Looking forward to that one. As always, thanks for watching, and I'll catch you guys and girls next time.